Right, well, joining us right now is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, good to see you. So Democrats stand to lose seats here in a mess literally of their own making. How do you think this plays out tonight on the midterms? What plays out tonight is going to affect the midterms in November?
Well, and look, I associate myself with everything Marcia just reported, as one should when they're in this business of journalism, but especially when it comes to New York. But look, I think the broader point here is what ultimately happens in House races in November, especially right there in the New York City area, may ultimately determine the size and the scope of the majority the Republicans are set to enjoy after November. If they can win those Long Island seats, for example, that have been redrawn and are considered to some extent competitive, if they can win a handful of seats upstate and in western New York that have also been redrawn in a more competitive way, then it's a bigger example of the real mistake that New York Democrats made by probably overshooting their ambition and trying to draw the lines the way they did before the court stepped in. So if Kevin McCarthy becomes Speaker, as many anticipate, he may have to do daily devotionals for Donald Trump and the New York State Democratic Party, ultimately, given the mistakes they made and the way things may go.
Well, you know, one upstate race is getting national attention. Some are calling the 19th Congressional District a bellwether and testing ground for abortion as a campaign issue in November. What do you think about that? That's a special election to replace Antonio Delgado, and it's Mark Molinaro versus Mr. Ryan.
That's right, Dan Ryan. Yeah, the Democrat. Yeah, and you know, as somebody who grew up just outside Albany, to hear bellwether in that part of New York State is a rare thing.
Right?
It is, and it just shows you how things have been scrambled across the state, and that, you know, while it is an incredibly Democratic state at the statewide level, the way these lines are now drawn, in arguably a fairer way, makes big pockets of New York State far more competitive at the congressional level. Watch this race, because while it's presumed it could go Republican, there's a thought, a hope among Democrats that they may just eke out a win, given the way things have gone this summer in terms of the Dobbs decision regarding abortion rights, given the fact that Democrats in Washington were able to get more things done here by the end of the summer, and that there's some sense among Democrats that the president's numbers may be turning around. Even if they lose by just a handful of points, they may take that as a moral victory, because it could have been far worse. And the other more confusing thing, of course, is that this 19th district ceases to exist after November, both of these candidates running in other districts in hopes of representing that broader region again under the redrawn lines. It just adds to the confusion and the mistakes that were made that caused this late August primary.
Well, I was wondering what you think the low turnout, the effect of low turnout could have, given the fact that Mark Molinaro is the Dutchess County executive and does have a base there. Will the low turnout help him because he's better known?
I mean, conceivably it would, yes. And that's going to give him a big leg up, obviously, in the next round in November, because he would conceivably be the incumbent, at least for most of those voting under the redrawn lines. I mean, it's funny. A late August primary works in Arizona or Georgia or Florida, where the kids are already back to school and everybody's come home from vacation. But you guys know, I mean, there's still a lot of people who aren't back, aren't thinking about this at all, are not accustomed to it, and the state got away from this, right? They moved everything into the spring to make it more competitive. Right. Now to do this, you know, at this late stage, under court order, it's gonna probably lead to some anomalies tonight in different ways across the state and down the ballot that we may not see the repercussions of for some time to come.
Yeah, the streets are literally empty in the city as we speak, and then who's voting, right? We've seen the low turnout, Ed. Before we let you go here, let's talk about the 6th borough, if we could, right here for a second. We're talking about Florida. A lot of New Yorkers have ties to Florida. The governor's race down there, what about the results there? What could they mean going forward?
Well, Ron DeSantis, the Republican, who of course many believe is going to run for president in 2024, regardless of Donald Trump, is fine because he faces no primary challenge. The question tonight is, who is the Democratic giant killer that they nominate and hope can somehow beat him in November? Charlie Crist is the former governor. He was a Republican at the time, left the party, became a Democratic congressman from the Tampa area. He's on the ballot versus the agriculture commissioner, Nikki Fried. She, a more progressive, younger, and obviously female candidate, making the argument this summer in the wake of the abortion rights decision that she's better equipped to take him on. Current polling, as unreliable as it can be this time of year, because it's, again, the summer and people aren't necessarily home and paying attention, suggests that this could yet again be a 1 or 2 point race statewide in Florida. Nobody should be surprised by that, because, as we know, all this century, big elections in Florida are usually decided by just a few thousand votes.
Yeah, I think somebody said Florida, 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 something like that.
Back in the day,
point.
that's
yes.
right. But again, come November, it may be those House races in New York State we're waiting to see about the margins of victory for the Republicans or Democrats. And that's what makes this year so much more interesting and different, is that for once, finally, not that they don't matter locally, but nationally, congressional races in the Empire State could actually really help tip the scales in Washington.
That they do. All right, surrounded here tonight by two of the best political minds in the business, Ed O'Keefe, Marcia Kramer. Thank you both. We'll talk to you more throughout the evening. Really appreciate it.